The University of Cape Town's Children's Institute has launched the South African Child Gauge 2024 report. The South African Child Gauge is published annually to monitor progress towards realizing children's rights. This issue of the publication focuses on early childhood development, reflecting on progress since the adoption of the National Integrated Early Childhood Development Policy back in 2015 and setting an agenda for 2030. For more on this, we're joined by SABC News reporter Vanessa Poonah. Good evening, Vanessa. So the Institute has this afternoon presented the main findings of the Child Gauge. Talk us through these.
Well, yes, good afternoon to you. And actually, it's quite alarming when one looks at some of the statistics contained in this latest annual publication. Just one of them is that one in every 25 children in South Africa die before their 5th birthday. So, of course, the main focus of this year's publication is early childhood development, enhancing that. But when we talk about early childhood development, we're talking about not just 3 to 5-year-olds, according to the report. It goes even beyond that to conception and the well-being of parents in getting children to maximize their full potential, and also how important this is for, or as a cornerstone for South Africa's development. Now, I'm joined now by the director for the Children's Institute at the University of Cape Town, Professor Widad Slemming, to just give us a summary of a very comprehensive document, over 200 pages long, if I'm correct, Prof. Good evening to you. So, of course, some of that statistics that I've just mentioned are very alarming. I mean, I think I read a figure of 71% of children in this country are living in the sort of upper poverty band, if that's the correct terminology that I'm using. So, can you summarize for us? I mean, where are we? What is the state of children in South Africa at present?
Thanks very much. So, what's alarming is that we're seeing corresponding rises in both child mortality, as you're saying, meaning that over 10 years of progress that has been lost. Our child mortality has been being reduced over the years, and we're seeing that it's now starting to creep up again. That's accompanied by increasing poverty, as you said, so 71% of our children living below the upper bound poverty line, meaning they can't meet their basic nutritional requirements and also basic needs like clothing and shelter. Also seeing a dual burden of malnutrition, seeing both over and undernutrition increasing in our youngest children. So all of this really should give us, pause and really think about how do we do better for our children. We can't let this continue, and we really have made clear commitments as a country to promote early childhood development across the board. Like you said, it starts from conception and it continues on to when children enter formal schooling. And it really is a comprehensive approach to early childhood development, encompassing all aspects of child development and health and well-being. And so it's not just about early learning programs or center-based education, like often we hear people talking about. It's really making sure that pregnant women access antenatal care early, that they get the care and support that they require during their pregnancies, that they, that we have support for the parents when the baby's born, that they come for their well baby visits, etc., etc. So it's really a much more comprehensive approach than just making sure that we have enough preschools for children and that they get good quality learning in preschools, because that's way too late. We've got to start earlier.
Prof, now the National Integrated Early Childhood Development Policy, that's been, around for the past few years. When we talk about directing policy decision-making, this latest report, how instrumental would that be to address the key findings, for example? Where do we start? It's not, and we know that government alone cannot, tackle this huge macro issue. So who are the people that this annual document speaks to?
Yeah, so the beauty of the Child Gauge is that it's a truly collaborative effort between civil society, government, academia and research. And the Children's Institute really bridges this research, policy and practice divide and almost acts as a mechanism to bring all these people together, to put their heads together and think through what needs to be done to change things for children. And so I think, there's already a translation piece in terms of having the people involved who are making these decisions in policy, in policy making, in the boardrooms, involved in these processes in every part of society, really filtering that through. And, the Child Gauge acts as a vehicle as a reference tool, and it gets used in so many different ways. And so, it's just having follow-up conversations and making sure that it gets to the spaces it needs to. But as you heard, more than 50 people were involved in this production, sitting in different spheres of society, not just in academia and research, within policy making, within programs, civil society, private sector, etc. And so it really can catalyze conversations and really filter through in decision making. But we have a responsibility collectively as a society to make sure that that happens.
Final question, and a quick one, Prof. South Africa, in terms of the continent, and then, of course, if one extends to globally, we're living in a world where we see wars, famine, etc. What role does South Africa play in terms of, putting forth this research, these findings, in terms of improving not just the lives of children in South Africa, but Southern Africa, Africa, and, of course, the world at large?
Yeah, you would have heard Professor Mark Tomlinson's speech earlier, his keynote, talking about children are in crisis all over the world. Children in South Africa are no different. And what's more worrying is that, it's not the big famine. It's not the big catastrophic climate event. It's actually day to day for our children that really is putting them in crisis. The fact that they've got co-occurring, exposure to risks like violence, like poverty, like malnutrition, food insecurity in households, etc., all co-occurring, clustering in households, and really having lasting effects over a lifetime. And so we need to be thinking about how do we do this better for our children in South Africa with these day-to-day risks that are really pervasive, and then also how are we responsive to much bigger shocks such as COVID-19 or climate events, etc.
Prof, thank you so much for your time. Of course, the Professor Widad Sleming, she's the Director of the Children's Institute at UCT, speaking at the launch of the 17th Annual Child Gauge Report here at the campus today.